So can you tell us about your journey from maybe did you start in YA? And then once you got to YA, how did you end up going to historical romance?
So I worked in YA. Yeah, if people find my my university profile, they'll see that I actually wrote a dystopian for my thesis, which was really interesting experience and I thought that I could, it did pretty good actually even in the query trenches. Like I was getting a lot of, I guess this was back in maybe 2016, 2017. Yeah, something like that. So it was doing okay, but dystopian was kind of dying at the same time. And I don't know, maybe it was just too different as well. So I did start in YA and I kept on plugging away in YA and I did a historical fantasy that got me a lot of opportunities. It never got published, but it did get me a lot of opportunities. One of them was Pitch Wars. I don't know if people are familiar with Pitch Wars anymore, but it was really big in the writing community for a while. And a lot of the Pitch Wars, like my class, a lot of their books have been published, really exciting stuff. So yeah, so I got to Pitch Wars and then I just kind of like set it aside. And I had worked on another adult project, which I still have hope for. And it was this time period, right? Around, I had done research around the cotton industry of the time period because for that particular, and that one was adult historical as well. And it wasn't necessarily romance, but it was adult historical. There's a romantic element to it. So I had that research, and all of my MA was mostly in the Victorian era, right?
Hmm.
So this is my area. This is the area I love to read. This is the area I love. Like if there's things on TV, this is what I'm gonna watch,
Yeah.
right? So I had an industry meeting based on that Pitch Wars book. And she was like, "Oh, historical romance is really, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I could do that. Like, I've done historical. I love romance, like, let's put them together." And so I felt like there was an opportunity there. And I wrote that first draft pretty quickly. So it's the Earl's Egyptian Heiress. I wrote it pretty quickly. It was rough. I had the opening scene that was really solid, and then there was something called Smooch Pit, which it's like Pitch Wars, but it's for romance only. And it was their first year. And I had said, okay, I'm going to try
Hmm.
to write this historical romance. You don't need an agent for it. I'm just going to submit to Harlequin. And then I saw this contest, and the editor that I was thinking of submitting to, she was one of the people who had volunteered to offer 50-page edits and query letter edits for this. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to like go ahead and submit it. So I got on the call. Her name is Carly. I got on the call with Carly when she picked me, right? And I was like, "Oh my God." And then I was like, "I wrote this for you, basically. I wrote this for Harlequin. I was gonna submit it. I know it doesn't need an agent, and I'm like sick with querying and getting close, but not close enough. So I wrote this for you." And then she's like, "Okay, I'll read the whole thing." And so it wasn't done. I'm like, okay, this is my one shot. Let me work on it. So then she called me about, I don't know how many months later, and she's like, okay, I got a chance. I want to offer you a contract. And so that's how I got the contract. So it was really, really serendipitous and it just the right timing. And I've learned so much for her. Like even when she bought it after, I thought it was pretty good. And then it was just like, I'm like, why did you buy this? Right? Because she had so much, so there was so much that I had to keep learning and I'm continually learning and that kind of focus and homing in on the romance. Like I said, I've come from YA dystopian, YA
Right.
historical fantasy. So just like really, you know, homing in on the romance and what romance readers want. And that's sad, like you talked earlier about, do you want this, do you want it to take place because that's the kind of convention. And romance is about meeting conventions. And it's taken a while for me to kind of like have that click in my mind, even though I knew it. And I don't think that there's anything, and I've never thought there was anything wrong with it, right? Because in the sense that if you're not writing happily ever after, you're not necessarily writing to tropes and conventions, then you're not sitting on the bookshelf where people are supposed to find you. So
Hmm.
people get lucky. And I think that one of the key points that I learned from this very long journey of going from dystopian to historical romance is that a book should meet uh, those genre expectations. Like you can write dystopian, right? But now, so I have this kind of clearer sense of where things sit on the shelf, and it's not necessarily just about saying, okay, I want to be creative, I want to tell a story, and and that's all nice, but I have to also think about what shelf is it going to be on, um,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. Were there any romance authors that you were reading to kind of get familiar with the genre? I mean, I know you were reading it before, but
Yeah. For craft purposes, I think it's different than for what sticks and sells, right? So there was those two sides that I was trying to balance. And for craft purposes, like Holly Black is just a fan, like I can't go wrong, but that's the fantasy space, right? Sabaa Tahir was through the Muslim Storytellership Fellowship, which was the Highlights Foundation. This was YA. She was a personal mentor, and Sabaa Tahir in the YA space, fantasy space, and even her more contemporary has won all the awards. So I'm inspired by Muslim writers a lot too. And in terms of the romance, I would say that Diana Quincy, for sure, right? The kind of having these Arab American heroines in her novels, and they're so popular and well done. I feel she's been a great inspiration to me. I came to her late. I didn't even know that there were Arab American authors, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah, for sure. And even just like in terms of the bigness of the Bridgerton series, right? So I absolutely only read the Bridgerton series when the show came out, but seeing what they've done to kind of bring in diverse characters and how they've disrupted that on the show, like when I first sort of um, pitched this, the idea was it's like a Bridgerton meets, North and South. So that was the kind of selling point. It's cotton industry, Egyptian perspective, meets this kind of like diverse season two of Bridgerton, where, there's this brown girl who is thrown into the season kind of thing. So yeah, I think that, the popularity, why some things are popular, and what's really cool about the Bridgerton series and how, they're being kind of revamped. And I would say that, there's this history, even indies, the historical romance that has this diverse, and it's a space that it can happen and has been happening. Beverly Jenkins, like for sure. All of
Yeah.
these names are coming up, but yeah, for sure. They're all in terms of what they're doing, in terms of craft, and in terms of even reaching readers, I think.